And tonight we have with us Benny Safdie, who's here with a number of his films. Just to introduce myself, my name is Rhys Graham and I'm a Melbourne-based filmmaker. I've been involved with the festival for a while. I think the first time I was here with Accelerator with a short film about 10 years ago, and then films that I've directed, Galore and The Turning, have played here, and I've also made a couple of documentaries. I like to think I try and work hard, but Benny Safdie is one of those people that filmmakers love to hate because he has been wildly prolific and prodigious in his filmmaking. At 29 years of age, he's had 2 feature films that have played in Directors' Fortnight in Cannes, 2 feature films that have played in Venice, a incredible amount of short films, as well as immeasurable other side projects. He works as a director, writer, actor, sound recordist, every imaginable part of the filmmaking process. And this afternoon we're going to talk with him about his process, about some of the films that hopefully some of you have seen that are screening as part of, well, it's like a career survey, which almost was a retrospective.
Yes, that's what I said. I joked that on the plane ride here, I was always really unnerved by the fact that this was a retrospective, because I feel like we're going to make probably double the amount of movies we've already made in the next 2-3 years. You know, so I was very nervous about that. It's a great honor to have that, but that word was just kind of sticking me. And yes, of course, on the plane right here, the cockpit window shatters, and of course the airline is very frightened by it, and we have to land the plane, and we're this emergency thing, and I realized that I almost died on the plane ride over here. So luckily it's not a true retrospective quite yet.
So it's a slightly less somber afternoon, and we'll talk about a number of the films. Probably one of the films that's coming out on, did we say September 23rd? I think? Yep, is Heaven Knows What, which for those of you who are seeing some of the films is a very raw, brutal and uncompromising film in many ways. Yeah. And it has a lot in common with Benny's earlier works, but some of them are quite joyful. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, films in joy and wartime and things like that, but we're going to start off with something else.
Yes, it's in joy and wartime is a perfect example. It's a short film, a social terrorist act that we committed in New York City, which is our place of discovery and love and where we live and where we're from. So I guess we could play that, right? I don't know if we can see.
Baby up! Yeah, you, back there. Baby's crying. I'm just trying to read my paper.
You can't read this paper?
Yeah. You just shut up.
This is New York, mister.
Yeah, I know it's New York, and this baby is...
Yeah, something's wrong with you.
Yeah, something's wrong with that woman. Okay, I don't know what's going on with you.
No, that's just a baby.
I know it's a baby. I know it's a baby, all right? I'm trying to read my paper. I'm just trying. Okay, you were screaming on your telephone, all right? All I'm trying to do is read my paper, all right?
About a baby.
Okay, that woman's back there.
We're all in a rush here, all right? Everyone's a little crowded, a little stressed out.
I understand.
Leave the baby alone.
I understand that.
It's not easy to...
Yeah, but that baby's back there crying this whole time.
Like, you're freaking everybody out.
All right? Unbelievable.
Chill out.
Yeah.
It's not even
I've
that
been trying to chill out this whole time.
Chill the fuck out.
Yeah, the least she could do. The least she could do. God damn it.
It's just a baby.
I understand.
Are there any babies flying?
Yeah, you're the one who's holding the baby that's crying, all right? The least you could do.
Maybe you should get off.
Yeah, how about getting off?
Let's get
We're
this
stopping
guy
at the
off.
stop. How about you get off the bus?
Back door.
Fine.
Back door.
Okay, but the least you could do is at least breastfeed the guy.
All right, let's go. Let's get him off the bus.
Get him off!
Back door. Back door.
You open the back door.
Oh my God.
Listen, there's a little piece of fight on the way. Not today, someday that guy lashes out and punches the mom in the face. Had there not been 20 people doing right now.
Assault somebody. Assault a stranger.
So, the second you start yelling, you break the line into a stranger.
No class, no job. I'm just a victim of society's love. No ass, no head. Gotta go home, jacked off instead. No mind, no kind. But let me tell you, my memory is blind. No way, can I live in a world this dead?
It's fitting because we do like to kind of embed our characters into the real world, just because that mixture creates something that's pretty incredible, and you can't really predict it. And with this, we really tried to predict how everybody would respond. But so in a sense, the route of the bus starts, I guess, on one part, and then there's maybe 6 stops before it enters the park. And when it enters the park, there's no bus stops, and there's nowhere for the bus to stop. So we had 3 minutes where we could make the movie. And so what we did was we had Josh get on at the first stop with a couple of actors, and then another friend get on with another, and Josh was filming, like, oh my God, I'm so excited, I'm in New York City, this is incredible, and he was filming everything. And then another person came on the next stop with a camera and was filming everything. And then I got on at the end, and once I got on, everybody who was an actor knew, okay, the movie's gonna start as soon as we hit the park. And they were just kind of there on the bus, so everybody was used to them filming. And as soon as we entered the park, I started screaming about this baby crying in the back of the bus, which there was no crying on the bus, so everybody thought I was absolutely insane. And what we thought was we had a bunch of people kind of there planted to tell us, say, hey, shut up, pal, it's just a baby. And one of them did, or Ariel Schulman, who's a filmmaker in his own right. He's the one kind of arguing with me about the civilness of being on the bus. But what we didn't expect was the woman screaming to back door, and this is New York, mister, and the whole bus kind of revolting against me. And it was just this insane culmination where we planted the seed and the seed exploded, and it was just an unreal. And then in the middle of the park, the guy opens the door, and they allowed the bus driver allowed me to be thrown off. And we literally had it all planned, that at the next stop I would be thrown off, but not in the middle of the park like that. And it was just amazing. And it was thank you, humanity, for doing what we expected. But
it's so great because it's the kind of thing that normally you would cook up with a lot of spare time and a lot of weed. But
yes,
you don't have any time for that. So at what point did you start working so prolifically and at such high velocity?
It's weird because it's just I don't look at it that way. It's almost like every once in a while we get to the point where we feel like we aren't doing anything. And after we made Go Get Some Rosemary, which is what it's called here, and Daddy Longlegs, we were trying to make another film, and we kept writing it, rewriting it, and it felt impossible to get this thing made. And in the process, somebody came up to us and was like, "Hey, I've got all this footage from 2001 about this basketball player. Do you mind looking at it and seeing if you can do something with it? Because I don't know what to do with it. I tried making this documentary, it didn't work." So we're like, "Yeah, I guess we got some time." And then we make this documentary, Lenny Cook. And that kid, and then after that, we were still trying to make this other movie. Then we made Heaven Knows What. So like in this weird spare period, we ended up making 2 features, which was crazy. And it was just because we were just trying to stay busy and stay mentally engaged. And those 2 projects are accidents in a weird way, but they were us just kind of trying to explore the world and human beings and how you kind of function. And I don't know, it's not boredom, but it's I guess it is. I don't know.
Well, we've dropped it in the middle, and we're probably going to be a bit freewheeling, which is probably in honour of your films as well. But just to go back for those of you who maybe don't know much about the bio of Benny. Benny's half of a filmmaking duo, and you might probably read the notes for the session that Josh, his brother, was also going to be here. Josh is a couple of years your senior.
Yeah.
And they work together as a duo, and we'll talk a bit more about that. The films that are being highlighted here, The Pleasure of Being Robbed, which was the first feature film, which was 2008?
Yes. And that actually was directed by Josh, but history has kind of just said that it was both of us. It wasn't. It was directed by Josh. I helped edit it. But I think because of the way it premiered, with my short film and at the closing night, there were both of us. I think that history kind of just, for some reason, adds me on as having made it as well. So
they premiered at the closing night of Directors Fortnight in Cannes, which in effect was your first big, even though you'd made a number of short films, it was sort of the first big festival.
Yes, and it was enormous. It was like it was like I couldn't believe it. It was gigantic, and that was how we kind of were introduced to the world at large, and that's directly responsible for the reason we made Go Get Some Rosemary. So,
and that was subsequently the next year.
Yes.
So Go Get Some Rosemary, which it's released here, and as Benny mentioned, it's Daddy Longlegs is the title in most other places. So if you're looking it up online,
in France it's called Lenny and the Kids.
Yeah.
People just feel they can name it whatever they want.
But maybe that's the nature of your films. I mean,
it is, yeah. They feel a certain ownership over it, where they're like, you know what, that's wrong. I think this is right. We're going to call it that.
And was that Ron on the bus?
That was, yes. Yeah, that was funny. I don't know exactly when this was made, but we were friendly with him, and I think it might have been after or during or before Daddy Longlegs. I'm not sure.
Has anybody here had the chance to see Daddy Longlegs, Go Get Some Rosemary?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's some.
And then subsequently, Lenny Cook, as you mentioned, 2013, which was a documentary, but like all your films, is a bit of a hybrid of fact and fiction.
In a way. Yeah, that one, it's weird because it's not fiction, but there's a lot of bending of reality to fit the actual reality. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a complete documentary. It's based on real footage. We shot real footage with him, Lenny, who was a basketball player. If you don't know, he was the #1 ranked high school basketball player in the country in 2001, which just so happened to be the year of Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James, and he was better than both of them. And he didn't make it, and there was something. It wasn't a crazy accident or disaster. It was just this lack of desire. He happened to be the greatest basketball player, but he didn't want to play basketball. So when LeBron James beat him and overtook him to become #1 and he became #3, he's like, all right, I don't really want to work anymore to do this, so I'm going to kind of cash out and see how far my talent can take me without doing the work. And that was an interesting story. It was like kind of mythical. Like, how do you have such a talent and just say, no, thanks? It was unreal that he was able to do that, and that he has no regrets about the situation. So, and that was this whole amazing part of his personality. But to tell that story, it's because there's no great tragedy other than the loss of potential, which I guess is humanity's greatest tragedy. That needed to have a narrative tale. You needed to be living the life with him and experiencing the story with him. So the timeline needed to be fudged a little, and there's a special effect in it that's kind of insane, where we have him going back in time talking to himself, and it's really absurd. It's insane to see, but you don't do those things in documentary. So it was strange, but so we were kind of bending it to kind of allow you to feel the same thing Lenny felt, and that's kind of the most important thing. And it's funny because that led directly into Heaven Knows What, which was, again, with Lenny, we were telling somebody else's story, and we had to figure out a way to tell it as effectively as possible. And with Heaven Knows What, we were telling somebody else's story, and again, we had to figure out how to tell it in the most effective way possible, except we were going to completely recreate and change and fictionalize her life to make it so that you as an audience would feel it. So it's definitely not a documentary. It's very clear it's not a documentary. It's a fiction film. But we learn some things with Lenny Cook, and I think that's just kind of how we move forward. Is every time we make something, we learn a little bit about the process from before. So,
well, it's funny. I mean, Lenny Cook was the first film of yours I saw, and obviously I was watching it and sort of thinking, well, I love Hoop Dreams, and that's the kind of the epic basketball
it's incredible,
film.
yeah.
And the way you just played with that the convention of initially watching this guy, and then it just kind of looped on itself and plays with time and plays with the characters, is something that then subsequently in all your other films, that sense of playfulness is really, that's me.
I'm actually calling him.
It's like, shut up. But the thing that I found really interesting is watching your other films. For us as an outside audience, New York has this hallowed place in cinema history. It's the kind of place that Scorsese and Woody Allen for international audiences. It's the Cassavetes streets. But watching your films, it's a sense of intimacy and overhearing conversations. I feel like it's one of those things you see somebody on the street and you grab a snatch of their conversation, and then in your films we go on this journey with them.
Yes.
And I was sort of wondering in what way does is there a kind of a sense of an imperative to pursue that kind of intimacy? And
yeah, I guess it's funny because we've always kind of there was a moment where we're like, we don't want to make any more movies in New York. This is something that is just strange. It's like we're only making New York movies, but now we're kind of embracing that aspect because everything we're doing is kind of you uncover something new about the city, and we're kind of just peeling away layers of it, and you just see something new and exciting all the time. It's a city that just doesn't stop giving you inspiration, and we're from there, we're raised there, so we have a kind of familiarity with it and the streets and the sidewalk. So it's just kind of a place where if you see somebody, you can kind of just watch them and kind of experience what they're feeling, and then learn everything about them by just looking at them and following them. So Heaven Knows What is a kind of a good example. Everybody kind of has they ask a question, why don't we know anything about her backstory? And I guess the short answer to that is because it's kind of more interesting to learn about somebody for the first time. So you see them, you're introduced to them in a very loud way, and then you follow them, and you kind of everything they do then becomes interesting because you don't know anything about them. So if you see them lie, that's the first time you're seeing them lie, so you have to pick up on how their face moves or how their hands move when they're lying, and you just kind of learn about them in that sense. And it's just kind of how you walk around in the city. You hear people's conversations on the train, you have incidents like that on the bus, there's something always happening. And then our goal, for example, with There's Nothing You Could Do was we wanted everybody on that bus who was real to go home and say, you have no idea what the commute I had was today. There was some fucking psychopath on the bus who was screaming out about a baby. There was no baby crying. That's the story that we really cared about, more so than what we ended up making. So in a way, it's kind of bleeding into creating these experiences for people who walk by us filming at the same time. So,
with, say, for example, The Pleasure of Being Robbed, which has brought you to at the attention of the world in the first place, you get the sense the film, which focuses on a kind of a strange, eternally cheerful kleptomaniac who has these meaningful exchanges with people on the streets of New York at the same time as she's trying to steal from them. Yeah. But there's this kind of like, I don't know, a lot of those moments seem stolen from real life, but obviously that was the beginning of your controlled chaos, which is here in the pranks as much as it is in all of your other films.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, like kind of creating these situations on the street and then filming them in a way that acts like you didn't stage them, and directing them in a way that kind of brings out that freedom. It's you do all this work to have it disappear, and that leads people who walk by to just think, oh my God, that was amazing, or I can't believe I saw this crazy fight on the corner of the street. And at one point during the filming of Heaven Knows What, a friend of ours walked by and tapped us on the shoulder and was like, do you guys see what's going on in the corner? Like, I didn't realize the Upper West Side was this hot, like, and hot meaning like drugs and craziness. And we're like, and Josh points to the monitors and was like, we're making a movie right now, don't bother me. And it was just like, he didn't even realize that he's a friend of ours. So there is something kind of important about that, and just allowing the city to exist and having people exist within it, because again, you can't control some of those things, and it leads you to see new things, and the actors have to kind of raise the stakes when they know that they're in reality, and you as a director have to raise your stakes, and you can't compare it. It's like, that's if you can prove it on the streets, you could prove it anywhere, really. So
it feels like, I mean, I guess the more that cinema evolves, the more we're moving into kind of deeper levels of artifice, and then one of the reasons why I guess a lot of cinephiles get excited about neorealism in the 50s or the New Wave is because there was this joy and excitement in what was happening in the real world, and the meeting point with cinema. And it feels like there's a really kind of aggressive pushing on your part to kind of dissolve that again.
Yeah, it's funny because with the latest film, we kind of ditched the handheld camera work, which we were using in the past. And again, it's always about the situation. With Go Get Some Rosemary, we had two real brothers who, it was a kind of a miracle that we found them. That's how Josh met Eleanor, who is in Pleasure Being Robbed. Right. She's an amazing casting director, and she has this ability to find these real people on the streets who have this kind of amazing thing inside of them. And he was talking with her, trying to find two real brothers who happened to maybe look like us. That was the goal. It was a very impossible task. They needed to be 2 years apart, 7 years, 9 years, and that was it. And he went through all these brothers. Some of them were Spanish, some of them were, it was just French. It was, everything changed. It was just like a goal to find the brothers, and then we'd figure it out. And we never found them, but eventually Josh was walking on the street telling me on the phone, we're never going to make this movie because the brothers just don't exist. And then as he said that, he looked down, and there was this kid, Frey, and he looked exactly like me as a 7-year-old. And Josh just kind of was like, I have to go, I'm looking at you as a 7-year-old right now. And he hung up the phone. And then he ran up to the mother and was like, I know this is going to sound weird, but please, I'm a filmmaker, you can look me up, this, that. We want to make a movie with your two kids. They're amazing, they're perfect. She's like, okay, hold on. You give me your information. She didn't want to give us hers, and she's like, I'll contact you. And then we figured it would never happen, and she did. She contacted us, and she said, you know what, this sounds kind of interesting. And then we looked her up, and she was an artist. And then
Lee Ronaldo's
yes,
kids.
She was an artist, and then Lee Ronaldo's the father. We're like, oh, great. They know exactly what goes into making a movie. This isn't going to happen. And lo and behold, they still said yes. And it was just kind of this amazing coincidence. We kept running into them. I kind of forget where I was going with this. But what was it? It was about, you asked me about what? It was
man, I don't even remember.
Anyway, so I went into it was Eleanor. I'm trying to piece it all together. But yes.
I actually can't remember where we started. Does anyone remember where we started?
Neorealism. Okay,
that's right.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Part of that is that there's this kind of okay, yes, we abandoned the handheld camera work. Okay, here we go. Yes, now it's all kind of cycling through. Sorry, I've been boxing, so I've been I'm not joking, so my head has been hit a lot. Anyway, with Daddy Longlegs, Go Get Some Rosemary, we had to kind of shoot handheld. We had to throw all of our knowledge of filmmaking out the window because these were two real brothers. And the moment they saw a slate, they were like, oh, movie. and they kind of just turned and focused on that, and they forgot about everything that they were doing, which was interesting. You know, they stopped being who we thought they were. They became different. So we're like, how are we going to do this? And Ronnie was kind of riling them up and creating these monsters for the film. And every time we took out a slate, it killed it. So we needed to kind of sneak the filming and capture these moments with these kids. So we threw the slate away, and we got this thing called a bloop slate, which was like just kind of a light that you shine at the camera, and it flashes the camera, but it sends a sound to the recorder. And 50% of the movie, I was running sound, Josh was running the camera, because we needed as small of a crew as possible. And the result is it's handheld, it feels like a documentary home movie kind of thing, but that was only because we needed to do that to capture the emotions that we wanted to capture. Fast forward to heaven knows what, and it's like, okay, we're making a movie about homeless heroin addicts on New York City. It's like you couldn't ask for a subject matter to be more handheld and gritty, you know? It's like that's what it's begging you to do. And it's for that very reason that we decided not to do it. So we locked off the camera. We shot from very far away, sometimes a block and a half away. And what ended up happening was it didn't matter. People still felt like, oh my God, this is a documentary. This is real. I can't believe I'm experiencing these things. And it's like there's things that happen. A firework gets thrown off because he throws a cell phone and explodes into a firework, and people just go along with it. And we realize it's because the performances and the people and everything that kind of the way that these characters are interacting with the city and the way that the city is interacting with the frame. These are all things that kind of happen and work with the movie. And I always think it's funny that if we shot it handheld, would people's heads explode? You know, like this is too real. So I don't even know how they would react. And with the neorealist was actually the first thing that I saw that made me think, oh my God, I think movies can be an incredible form of exploration and ideas. Because I was almost a physicist, and I went to school to kind of become that. And in high school, I had done a lot of stuff. I learned about cosmic rays, and I was working on some project to institute the largest particle shower detector in Manhattan, and then as a result, the world. And the whole idea, it's amazing. The idea of it was you take these water towers, which are legally supposed to exist on every building in Manhattan, and in the water tower, you put a photoelectric detector, which all it does is, if a high energy particle enters that water, it creates light that can be detected by this thing. So eventually, and they cost like $100. So you put it on the top of every school, and every school has this weird, awesome physics program that they don't have to pay for, and you put them all together, and you have a huge detector. And I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but that was what I was doing. I was very excited by it, but I found myself kind of very excited about teaching it and explaining these crazy ideas and theorems to people, and less the actual math of it. Anyway, I go to school to do that, and I realize that's not what I want to do. And Josh invites me to come up to Boston University, which is where we both ended up going to school. And in the class, the teacher is showing Il Posto, which is an Italian neorealist film, one of the later ones. But it was just so natural and beautiful. It was just about this guy going to work or trying to get a job, and it just showed with all these real amazing faces. And it was just kind of an amazing revelation that that's what you could do with this. And realism was a kind of a way to like sneak in these ideas. And I don't know, it just kind of started this whole idea of how to play with it, how to take advantage of it, how to use it, how to not use it. And I don't know, it's something we're still working with. But now that there's a retrospective, we're not making any more movies. No. It's done. We're done.
I love that film. It makes a lot of sense. And in a way, one of the things I was going to ask you about, you're mentioning Heaven Knows What. Obviously, you're shooting incredibly long lenses from very far away. But the thing is, when you're shooting really long lenses from very far away, you have to be really precise about what you're doing and where you're going. But the performances still feel so free-ranging and energetic and wild. What kind of process do you use to work with your actors, and at what point do you? I mean, how do you get that again? That sense of controlled chaos and that sense of high velocity movement that is in there, but somehow must have been completely contained.
For for each person, we kind of there is an idea and a script of like A to Z of where we want to go with each scene, but we kind of put it aside and work with each actor to kind of figure out how they would say it best. And so what you're hearing is what we wanted, but it's not direct. So it's improvisation as this kind of tool to get you to a more kind of genuine place. So we could write it, and it would be, for us, it would be great, but when we write it down, it's almost like just to get the idea down on the page, and then the actor will work with them to get it to be more real. And I think that resonates because it makes them more excited to kind of work at it, and it's like, okay, and then eventually the lines get learned, because once you kind of figure it out, it's much more exciting. It's like when you write something down, in addition to, that's why when you memorize things, you have to write it down also. When you're kind of engaging all of these different parts of your brain at the same time, you get more involved, and then the performances get better, and everything works together. So that's, in a way, how we do it. No.
Is that process taking place well in advance, or are you doing a lot of that stuff on the day?
No, it's a mix. It's a mix. You know, we'll be talking with the people who are in it, who we know, and sometimes there are people who show up for that day, and we'll work with them. But a lot of the times we do pick people off the street. You know, we find them or we know them, and the term that everybody uses is, they're non-actors. But if they were non-actors, they wouldn't be in the movie acting. They're actors. They just never acted before. That's the way it is. So they're first-time actors is how we like to call it. And so it's like in a short film, John's Gone, that we made, there's this guy Mitchell who's unbelievable, and he's incredible. And I remember Josh and I are sitting at a diner, and this guy walks in. He's got this like big leather jacket on, but he's really short, and he's got this crazy hair, and he's got this really like interesting voice, and he's just kind of like messing around with his friends. And all Josh and I can do is just stare at this guy. He's unbelievable. The fact that he's so completely unaware of the world around him, and he exists in his own world, and we're like, this guy is awesome, and he would be an amazing actor. So Josh looks at me, he's like, go for it, like go and do it. And you have to like work up the courage to like go and ask this guy on a date or something, is what it feels like. And I ran outside and I was like, hey, I think you're really great. I don't know what we'll use you for, but we want to use you in something. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, why don't you want to use my friends? And he did that. He said that because he wanted to like say to his friends, like, I'm better than you guys. So we're like, oh, because I really like you. He's like, oh, so you just want me, you don't want them, right? And I was like, yeah, that's right. And he's so excited by that. But it was just kind of these personalities that jump at you. You can't ignore that. You know, these everyday stars, and mixing them with people who are actors or who have acted before, kind of allows everybody to work together, you know. And I think with Heaven Knows What, Caleb was this established actor. You know, he's working in Hollywood. He was in X-Men, and he's working now with all of these kids who had never acted before, and he had to kind of play to a performance that worked and made them believe him, and it kind of he had to up his game. And Ariel played this performance so beautifully, and everybody had to act up to her level. So it kind of...
Sorry, for those who have seen the film, Caleb plays Ilya?
Yes.
Yep.
And Ariel plays herself as a fictionalized version, Harley. So she... Just a quick... I didn't want to say this, so I have to say it, because I've been saying this all the time. The way the movie was made was Josh saw her on the street and on the subway, and basically he, in the same way that all these other interactions happen, he saw her, thought she was interesting looking, she had this presence. He went up to her to ask her to be in a movie. He didn't know what or where or how, and he ended up just becoming friends with her, and eventually found out that she was homeless and addicted to heroin, and it was just kind of a pretty shocking thing for him. And then eventually he asked her to write down her story, write down her life, what it was like. He said, if you're sitting on the street, write down everything. If you're staring at a piece of sidewalk, tell me what the sidewalk looks like. And she wrote down 180 pages of stuff, and that was the basis for the movie. And then we're like, okay, how do we do this? You know, how do we tell this story? And then him and Ronnie kind of crafted that book into the film, the writing of the film, and what it was. And then when we were making it, it then morphed again into this new thing with all these new people. And it's just kind of an ever-evolving process from the beginning to the end, just to keep it alive. Because I think if the whole thing is so easy and so perfect, we would never be happy with that because it wouldn't make a good movie in a weird way. Because the process of kind of the struggle, or like if you get to the editing point and it's this shot goes here, boom, 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 that would be too much. It wouldn't be good, if it was that easy. So there's always this kind of crisis that adds to the element of it, and I think that breeds into the film also. So, all of them. No, I don't just mean heaven knows what. But.
Well, I think the energy behind your films is obviously something that people really respond to, because you feel that a lot of the constraints that often are a part of the filmmaking process are let loose. But it is so interesting that you have such precise technical processes behind it to let things be loose.
Yes, it's weird because we'll work very, very hard on. In Go Get Some Rosemary, there's a giant mosquito, and this thing cost $15,000 to make, which is insane on the budget we were working with. And the guy made 3 of them, and one of them was going to be destroyed in this dream sequence. And normally, if you have a prop like this, you're like, all right, we got to get some extra cameras in here. We're going to light it. We can mess with it in post so that we don't have to worry about, we don't want to miss anything. And we shoot it as if it's very dark, and it's barely registering on the light meter because we shot that on film, and we just shoot it as if it was actually a real giant mosquito flying in this guy's apartment, and we treated it that way. And because we treat it that way, it feels that much better in the nightmare. It's not like this weird prop that shows up out of nowhere. It's a real thing it's scary, And then same movie. There's a water skier in it, and it's just so funny because everybody comes up to us I can't believe you found this water skier, because it's this guy who has a boat, and on the back of the boat are these giant speakers, and there's a painting on the side that says "Cuando Caliente en Sol," and it's this he has this music playing, blasting out of the speakers. And he's holding on with one hand, singing as he's water skiing. So but at the same time, we're filming the scene. We're on this boat in this. It should have been freezing, but luckily it's 60 degrees on this beautiful day. The water's freezing, but we have another guy water skiing on the back. And the whole point of the scene was, as this guy's water skiing, this other singer flies by and takes the attention away from him. So we're filming it, and all of a sudden, bam, he comes by, the camera sees him. I think it ends up being 15, 30 seconds in the movie, at most. But everybody's like, what are the chances that you guys happen to have this guy there singing, and he's incredible? It's just a beautiful thing and beautiful coincidence that you guys had that. The truth is, the guy came from Florida because he had to be black, and he had to know how to be a water skier because we were modeling it off of a calypso singer who would practice his songs singing while water skiing. So we had to find this guy who was capable to hold a microphone with one hand and hold on to the actual rope with another and ski. So we found this guy, Larry, who we flew him up from Florida, and then we had to buy a boat, build the boat out with these speakers, paint the thing on the side, drive it from Long Island to upstate New York, and then get it into the water, register the boat in my name, and then so I have this boat that's still, it's a whole other story. I'll tell it after. But so we had this boat, we put it in the water, and then we film the scene. But again, we don't treat it like we put all that work into it. We treat it as if it's now this thing that exists in the real world, and we just happen to be lucky to capture it. So that bleeds into the audience because then you have as much awe about it as the characters in the film do. And who cares that we spent all this time, money, and effort on it? Because if you labor into it, it's pointless. In Black Balloon, which is a short we made, which you can all see for free online. It's just on Vimeo. Search for The Black Balloon, and you'll see it. It's Andy, who actually produced 2 of our features, Andy Spade, he sent us a video of a black balloon kind of rolling in the street. It was very sad. And he's like, I want to make the black balloon. You know the movie The Red Balloon? He's like, I want to make the black balloon. So we did. We made this movie, and it ends with I guess I'll just ruin it for you all, but at the end, the balloon has to break out all of these other trapped balloons. And it was a very precise thing. We only had 3 or 4 windows to work with, and we decided to shoot it from across the street, across a 6-lane basically highway, and the camera's there. And the way we worked out the break, it was very, very difficult to have the window break and have the balloon break it. And if a car drove by, a split second, we would have missed it. And we would have ruined everything. We wouldn't have had the ending of the movie. But we decided to do that. We decided to film it from across the street and take that chance, because if we get it, bless you, if we get it, it's going to be that much more incredible to see it on the screen. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. So that's kind of how we treat those things. But just to fast forward to the boat thing, I just remember a year and a half after finishing the film, I get a letter in the mail saying I've been fined. Somebody drove. I'm getting a ticket from somebody in Delaware, and somebody took the license because the boat broke down, the trailer broke, everything was a disaster, and it was such a horrible shoot that day that we just said, you know what, to the people who own the water skiing place, keep the boat, keep the trailer, we're done with this. We don't have any way of getting it out of the water because the trailer broke and the boat broke down, so just keep it, is what we said. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to throw it out. The thing's a piece of shit anyways. And we're like, all right. They fixed it up. They fixed the trailer. They took my license plate off of the trailer and put it on their car, and then just were speeding around Delaware getting tickets. And I started getting all this stuff. And so I called the guy, and I was like, what's this about? He's like, I don't know, man. He's like, if I were you, I'd report that stolen. And then I did. I went to the police department. I reported it as stolen, got the tickets waived, and then I guess the guy did it again and got pulled over and arrested because I get a phone call which says, I put it in my phone, like, John Payne water ski, do not answer. And he called me being like, what the fuck? Because he didn't think I was actually going to go and report this thing. But anyway, it's some of the after effects of, like, just you're shooting and you don't know what to do, and that's just what you just got to take that
the
chance.
dissolving boundaries of your filmmaking world. I will ask some questions of the audience, but I wanted to ask you. I've got a lot of questions to try and get through, but we're talking about your films as if they're these kind of isolated moments, but in fact they're all these very beautiful, quite again going back to that idea of intimacy, following usually one central character in a very non-judgmental way through a set of experiences that are very much don't conform to what we consider the usual character storytelling.
Yeah.
How do you go about the scripting process? It's very performance-based, but it's obviously very, very scripted.
Yeah. Well, it's project to project, you know. But I guess it goes back to that original kind of idea of, like, following somebody and kind of seeing them for the first time and then trying to understand who they are as the movie goes along. Because I guess, for example, in Daddy Longlegs, he does something that's very bad. And after he does that, anything he does, you can watch, and it will be interesting. And it was kind of an interesting moment for us to realize when we were scripting it, because when we wrote it, we didn't realize it would have such a profound effect on the audience. We knew it would be an effect, but we didn't realize it would be so, like, vitriolic and crazy for people to experience. So it mainly is just kind of, you trust the internal logic of each movie. And it's difficult because once you subscribe to that logic, you can't change. You can't just say, like, you know what? It would be much easier if the door was open and he could just kind of get out, and then that's how he escaped. And, like, you can't do that. You kind of have to, once we kind of imprison ourselves in the logic of the movie, and that forces you to get more creative with how to get around it. I just remember Ronnie was who made a very good movie on his own right, Frownland, which is incredible. I just remember we were working on something a long time ago, and the logic of it was so we had to just kind of scrap the whole, like, enormous amount of time we put into this one part of the movie, because it just didn't make, like, we couldn't logically have the character leave this spot, so it ended there. And it was like, okay, we can't do that. And it's kind of how it works with everything else, is like, okay, does this make sense, or am I just making this up to make the movie get to a better place? It needs to logically work with the character who's the main person you're following, or the group of characters, and you can't betray that. And because we don't, I think maybe it translates to everybody in the audience and translate to us, and and then in the editing, that's how it works too. Is again, you have to subscribe to the feelings and emotions that are in the movie. We could have shot a scene that would have been that's amazing. Nothing like that. The thing is with deleted scenes, they're always usually deleted for a reason because they're bad. This doesn't really quite work, so we're going to cut it out just to shorten it up. But a lot of the times we have deleted scenes that are incredible, but they just don't work in the timeline of the movie. It's these people are acting a little bit different. They're just not quite in this moment, and we can't logically include it because it throws off that emotional timeline. And so it's sad because in Heaven Knows What, there's this amazing moment where the two characters have, but it's just not right for that moment and that time. So.
But in a way, like your films still there's a lot of pleasure in them, and that you go on to, there are moments that are included that are they're unusual, and they are those things that you glimpse in passing on a street.
Yes.
And we were talking about this earlier on, there's a moment in The Pleasure of Being Robbed where there's a guy in a park and he's filming his kid, and he's telling the kid to kind of get up on the top of the slide, and he has a little bucket of sand, and he's saying, pour the sand down the slide, and the kid's like, I don't want to do that, it's dumb and weird. And the dad's filming, he's like, yeah, but it's going to be great for our movie. And when I watched that, I was like, I really feel like that's something from your life, or in a way.
Well, it's basically what Josh wanted to do with that was how our father would film us all the time, and I mean everything. He would film, and he would force us to do these things that we didn't want to do because he was making this large movie that we didn't know what it was or what it was going to be, and he just never stopped. And he would take his camera to other kids' birthday parties and film us while we're there. And it's like, it was so weird. So there's footage of like Josh in a party hat and then him singing happy birthday to somebody else, but that to us was like, why is he doing this? It's interesting to see another kid at another kid's birthday party, that actually is more interesting than if he had filmed our birthday. So he was kind of implanting in us this weird seed that everything can be interesting if there's context, or why am I filming all the kids at the table, and then he'll pan up and see all the balloons at the ceiling, and you realize all the kids just kind of let go of the balloons and forgot about them. But filming each kid and then showing the balloons, it was weird, and watching these as an older person, you could see what he was doing, and as a kid, you're like, why is he filming me right now? And we would ask ourselves that all the time, and that eventually kind of bled into our heads of like, okay, everything kind of can be filmed, and we did this thing in Curacao. Everybody know where Curacao is? It's like a Dutch colony in the Caribbean. I didn't know where it was, so if you don't, it's fine too. So I got a call from the State Department, and this was the second time we were involved with the State Department. The United States has this weird cultural exchange, which is beautiful. They kind of have filmmakers and artists go to another country and just they exchange culture. It's like, I think maybe a side effect from the Cold War, I don't know. But we did it first in Lithuania, and it was an amazing experience. But this one guy, Michael Bandler, he emailed us, and he was like, I'm like, yeah, this is a scam. He wants me to give him my social security and all this information, and it's the State Department, yeah, right, and you're going to pay me? No. So I just ignored it, and he was telling the truth, and we went to Lithuania, did this thing, and then I remember one day I get a call. He's like driving home to like beat a snowstorm. He's like, hey, Benny. I'm like, who is this? He's like, it's Michael Bandler from the State Department. I'm like, all right. And he's like, how you guys want to go to Curacao? And I looked it up, and I just saw island in the Caribbean. I was like, yes. And so Josh and I go, but it turns out to be, it's a Caribbean island, but it's in the middle of like the trade wind, so the water's super choppy. It's a weird place, and these people live on this island. It's very small, and these cruise ships just come in and dump people on there, and they export whatever it's like basically a very arid place, and they export everything they have. So everybody's always eating fried fish and rice, and it's a very interesting place. And we were doing this cultural exchange, and we were kind of showing them movies and showing them our stuff and explaining to them that you could make a movie about your life. And they're like, what do you mean I could make a movie about my life? My life isn't interesting. And we sat them down and just said, look, just write down what what happened to you over the weekend that you can't forget? And one kid is like, I remember sitting in my home. It's Sunday. I had just gone to church, and I'm very upset that all these kids are outside playing, and I wasn't, because I thought it was wrong. And he's like, that to me is bad. And I was like, okay, well, let's think about how we could make this as a movie. Let's show you being inside as a religious person, and let's try and show the people outside as these kind of evil people. And he was like, this is incredible. He was like, I can't believe that you're even interested in this. And that the fact that he could explore these ideas was completely new to him. And then all the kids kind of lined up, and we were doing this kind of weird psychoanalysis with them, going over all of these stories. One kid was like, and the only way off the island in Curacao is if you're a baseball player. It's like 100 people out of like 700,000 get into the MLB. It's insane, the amount of people who actually make it into Major League Baseball. But this kid was the best in his school, and he slid into home plate, and he just shattered his entire foot and his leg. And he just said it was an incredibly horrific moment for him, because he realized he was never going to make it, and that was it. And we're like, oh my God, this is actually could be an incredible short film. And we told him, let's build it up about how baseball's the only way off, and you're playing this incredible game, and then you slide into home plate, and then you cut away to everybody's reactions, and he's like, oh my God, he's writing it all down. He's so excited. And then somebody wanted to be a chef on a cruise ship, and we're like, that's unbelievable. And this is like all these things. We're hearing these are amazing ideas, but to them, they're just their dreams, their desires, and they're things that they think about. And they now were so excited about telling these stories. And it was just weird for us to see that it wasn't like normal for them to think that they could do that. And I don't know, it was a pretty profound experience, and to just also hear all these things.
Well, I guess that's the beauty of the cinema you guys make, is it does that shift, that we start to feel that cinema is a bit alienated from our own worlds, but in fact, it's 100% there.
It all comes full. So it's like all full circle, funnily enough. So.
Now, I know we're going to be running out of time, but has anyone got any questions in the audience that they'd like to ask? I'm sorry we've been jumping around so much, but it's hard with the amount of...
Thank you for whoever saved me from my portal of despair with the neo-realist comment. All right. Anybody, shout it out, anything. Lottery numbers, I'll give them out.
Yep.
I was just curious... Oh, hello. Hi. I was just curious to know, like, how big your crews are, what roles you have on set. Just, it seems amazing that you make these films with a film crew. Mm-hmm. I just imagine that would be very hard.
It changes. It changes for, like I said, with in Go Get Some Rosemary, sometimes it was just two people and the actors. It was me and Josh and Ronnie and the actors, But then in that movie, there's a paper tornado, and we needed 12 to 15 people to operate leaf blowers and throwing paper and blocking pedestrian traffic. So it just kind of ebbs and flows with the size of the scene, and with Heaven Knows What, it was at times like 8 people. There were 2 cameramen. They had people helping them. There were people running around. We always kind of try and keep it to the bare minimum of what is necessary, because we don't like people just kind of standing around, because that's the death of movies. I worked as a PA on some movies, and it was just like, I remember I was standing at a corner for 6.5 hours blocking traffic, and it was really late at night, and I finally radioed in. I was like, hey, so you guys still need me to block the traffic? And like, oh, we moved on like 4 hours ago. And they didn't even realize I was just kind of left there. So we don't want that to be the case, because then that breeds kind of this weird bad energy on the set. So we do kind of try and keep them as little as possible, but they can get larger. And because everybody's working on it to that extent, you don't feel it. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of people behind it, because there isn't. But at the same time, when there is a lot of people, everybody's doing something, and so everybody's engaged.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yep. Just down here.
I'm just curious to know, like, if you have any projects set up for filming outside of New York, like if you guys are exploring that territory outside of even US.
Yeah, it's funny because I said before we wanted to not make movies in New York, but we keep finding new reasons to keep filming there. And it's not like we're adverse to filming anywhere else, but we do want to just kind of, eventually now we've embraced it. You know, if in the future somebody says, hey, if you really want to learn about New York, go and see the Safdie brothers, like movies. They make really weird movies about New York and these weird characters. That would be an amazing thing to happen in the future. But I don't know. We almost made this movie in Florida. I don't know. We're inspired by other ideas. Wherever there's a good story, you know, we would go and make it. But right now we're just kind of stuck in New York. We just really like it. So
it is. So it's great that there's that street level view. And I was thinking about a filmmaker who we often have here is Jem Cohen, who makes this sort of street level view of New York, but in a very, I guess, mediated through an intellectual eye. Whereas again, yours is kind of like, I imagine they're the people passing behind the shoots of the New York that we normally know. And
that's true.
It does just feel like a New York that is completely. It's very entrapping though. Like there's always a scene, it feels like, in your films where they try and escape. They go on a drive in Daddy Long Legs. There's
true.
like, you know, the pleasure of being robbed. There's a drive. They're always trying to get upstate or somewhere else.
Everybody's always trying to get away from something but they end up always coming back. There is some Melbourne shufflers in Heaven Knows What.
Which we're really grateful for, because that's probably our greatest cultural export.
It's unbelievable.
City, so.
I cannot. It's some of the most incredible. It's like superhero music.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we are influenced by the rest of the world, and we just kind of bring it into New York.
There's another great Australian influence for you, isn't there?
Yes. I don't know. How many guys here have seen Crystal Voyager? Yes, it's incredible, and it's this like 1973 surfing documentary, but at the same time, it's weird. There's a lot of like weird stage stuff. He's doing some voiceover. I forget the surfer's name, but it's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Nat Young?
Nat Young, yeah. And he's incredible. He builds the cameras and he puts them on his surfboards. He works for movies, so you kind of see him working on other films, and then it's all set to Pink Floyd's Echoes. It's just an incredible movie. It's all on YouTube if you want to go and watch it. But I remember seeing it and just kind of being inspired by it, and its laid backness and just its beauty. I don't know. There's something there that I can't quite put my finger on, and the text of that title card is awesome. You know, it's Crystal Voyager. It's all it's amazing.
I'll just check how we're going for time. Are we? One more question? Yep, just here.
I was going to say, like, the time between when you meet someone on the street and you think about casting them, then you start writing. Is there sort of, I mean, there must be, like, nerves to, like, you know, what's going on with that person in their life. They're going to be still ready for the film once you start shooting, you know, what, I mean, particularly with the new one.
Yeah.
Probably, you know.
It's true, yeah. I don't really think about that. But yes, for example, when we went up to that guy Mitchell, it was probably 4 or 5 months later, and you kind of have to like remind him who you are. But with Ariel, it was different. You know, Josh had been friends with her before the movie was even an idea, so he was just kind of talking with her, and it didn't. The movie was then born out of that friendship, so it was more. He wasn't nervous about anything, you know, that was going to happen to her outside of the normal, just kind of because of the life she was in. But the movie happened very fast, and it did. For example, the Buddy Duress, the main character, one of the main actors in that, we knew we had to make the movie really fast because he's like, I'm on the run from the police. If you don't make this movie, they're going to arrest me, and you're not going to be able to have me as an actor. So we literally needed to shoot. And every day we would say, do we have enough stuff with Buddy to use his character because he could get arrested? And towards the end of the shoot, they were getting very close. The cops would kind of pull up to the movie set, like where we were, and just look at us and be like, what's going on here? They didn't really quite know what was happening. And he's like, I promise I'm going to finish. I promise I'm going to make it. And 12 hours after we finished the final looping session, he got arrested, and he went away for a year. So it was just literally, there was that concern in that sense where we knew we wanted him to be in the movie, but he couldn't get arrested before then. So we literally had to make the film as fast as possible to accommodate that. So.
Sorry, can I just say this?
Yeah.
I mean, did you think about shooting it in a way where, like, you could edit his character, or, you know, like, edit around things, or?
We just... Yes, we're always thinking about the editing. You know, the editing always changes the film enormously afterwards. You know, you have this idea of what you're going to go into, but the editing then completely switches, and you have to come up with a new thing all the time. So we would ask ourselves, is there a way to edit the film, not edit him out, but is there a way to edit it so that his character wouldn't be strange? Of course, if he had gotten arrested at a certain point, it would have been impossible, and we wouldn't have worked. But as we were getting closer to the end, we're like, do we have enough? We would move shoot dates to kind of accommodate him, having him completely shot out, you know. And it was a constant fear of ours and his, you know, because he really was invested in the film, and he said it was the best experience he'd ever had, and he wanted to finish it. He's like, I'm gonna do it. And he did, and we did, and it's incredible. But
there's a part of me that kind of goes, why would you want to make films on the point of collapse the way you do? And yet I know exactly why you want to do them, because it's on the screen. Like, you get that. It's all that amazing energy.
It's integrated from the ground up, you know, and not all of them are going to have that craziness baked into it, but there is something. There is an element of surprise always there, and.
We haven't had time to talk about your relationship with your brother, which would have been great, but there's lots of articles online. There's a great interview, actually, with you guys and the Dardenne brothers that I read.
Yes, that was amazing. I guess the thing is with the way that Josh and I kind of work is because we're brothers, we can have as many fights as possible, and you have to be brothers at the end of the day. You can't change that. So we'll always talk about the idea, and the idea wins always. And for example, on Heaven Knows What, he was the one who was kind of friends with all these people, so he was more comfortable talking to them. They didn't know who I was. So in that, he would go up and kind of tell them in the beginning, he would kind of tell them the direction and tell them how to go. But I kind of realized that because I was running the sound and he had an earpiece to hear what I was recording, I could kind of pull down the boom and talk to him as he was talking to them. And during one scene, he was giving this one actor direction that I knew, because I was I was really close to the action. I knew that he needed to do something differently, and I knew exactly what to tell him. But I didn't want to go up and tell him and disrupt the conversation. So I kind of just pulled down the microphone and just said, hey, Josh, why don't you tell him to go and do this and change this and add a little bit of this? And Josh just seamlessly added it because I could then hear him talking through their lavs. He just added what I said to them, and the actor had no idea that there were two people talking to him, you know. So that's kind of our main goal is kind of collapsing. And it's the first press book that we did for Go Get Some Rosemary. They had a hard time kind of, because our voices are similar, so they had a hard time differentiating us. So we just said, you know what, fuck it, just credit us as one, and that's how they did it. So, and that's actually. Sorry, I know that we're going to be kicked out of here at any moment, but what we found was originally we were making movies separately. Josh made Pleasure Being Robbed. I made this short, Acquaintances of a Lonely John, and that was because I was literally living in Boston and going to finishing school, and he was living in New York.
But you did cut for him though, so it was still a creative relationship.
Yes, of course. He edited. I edited Pleasure Being Robbed with him, and so. But I'm just saying we didn't have it credited as directed by both of us. But what we found is that once we started getting involved, we were changing the product so much that we couldn't say that it was one or the other because it was so changed, you know. And with I would approach with a certain idea, and originally it was going to be just me, and it just didn't work out that way because it became something completely new after it was filtered through both of us. Not to say that each of us are bad on our own, you know, that's not true. It becomes something new, and it's something that we're exploring, you know, and that's great. And we couldn't be involved with each other and not have it be by both of us because of the nature of how we work. You know, we both go into it completely, and it just changes it. So
I read a quote that we couldn't even work out who had said it.
Exactly. We were in the back. I was like, I think I said, we don't know.
But it's if John Vigo, John Cassavetes, Buster Keaton, Woody Allen, and Charlie Chaplin had a deformed child, we would be their best friend.